for holding this hearing and for having us here at this very critical moment for Hong Kong. For more than 100 days now, young people in Hong Kong have been at the forefront of our resistance. This is a leaderless movement with widespread participation from people of all walks of life. It is a fight for democracy, a fight for human rights, and most of all, a fight for universal values. What started in June as a 1 million people march has morphed into a struggle for fundamental political reform in Hong Kong. Chief Executive Carrie Lam's misjudgments and arrogance worsened the situation, resulting in a total clampdown of the Beijing government over Hong Kong's affairs. To date, more than 1,500 Hong Kongers, the youngest at the age of 12 years old, have been unreasonably arrested. Sadly, it has become a daily occurrence to see youngsters being pinned to the ground with head concussions, if not being knocked unconscious. On the other hand, riot police and plainclothes officers have since early on deliberately hidden their ID numbers and warrant cards, making it impossible for us to even certify their legitimacy, let alone hold them accountable. On August 21st, police from the Special Tactical Unit charged into Prince Edward MTR station, beating up passengers randomly. They then shut down the station for 24 hours, refusing medical care for those who were injured, raising even suspicions of possible deaths in the station. Separately, now they will be charging in secondary school yards, shopping malls, and buses where young people merely dressed in black can be searched or even arrested without justification. In other words, merely being young is a crime in the police state of Hong Kong. The protests began with the extradition bill, but at the core, it has always been about these fundamental conflicts between two very different sets of values. On one hand, the China model, which has no respect over human rights and the rule of law, and our hybrid city that has enjoyed these very freedoms for the most of its existence with a deep attachment to these universal values that the United States and other Western societies treasure. Hong Kong represents something unique in the world. We have long held dear our rule of law, transparent institutions, and the freedom of expression in a part of the world where these are most often threatened than upheld. However, this system is now under great threat. Companies like Hong Kong's major airline Cathay Pacific has succumbed to political pressure, firing dozens of employees due to their political stance. The business community is coerced into making political decisions. As a singer and activist from Hong Kong, I have experienced the suppression firsthand. Ever since the umbrella movement in 2014, I have been blacklisted by the communist government. My songs and my name are censored on Chinese internet. Pressured by the Chinese government, sponsors have pulled out, even international brands have kept their distances. For the past 5 years, and even more so recently, China tried to smear and silence me with their propaganda machines, spreading false claims. Right now, I am facing threats from pro-Beijing supporters and could face arrest and prosecution at any time. Not only have I faced difficulties in both China and Hong Kong, but the self-censorship has now spread towards global institutions and cities. Recently, the National Gallery of Victoria in Melbourne, Australia, denied venue to an event of Chinese artist Badiu Cao and myself due to security concerns. Celebrities from Hong Kong, Taiwan, and China are all pressured into voicing their unanimous support for the Beijing government and could be condemned for keeping their silence. Hong Kongers are now living in a constant fear and have unfortunately lost the most of our freedoms. For a city that has been famously known as politically indifferent, the younger generations have took up the role to safeguard our home, standing up courageously to the corrupted system in spite of increased suppression. To the rest of the world, the United States is often a symbol of freedom and democracy. The freedom Americans enjoy is something that the people of Hong Kong have long hoped for. Even though our languages and cultures differ, what we have in common is the pursuit for justice, freedom, and democracy. Through the challenges of Hong Kong, the West is also waking up to China's insinuating power in a global scale. Hong Kong is connected to the world in multiple ways, but China is trying to isolate it to exert control. If Hong Kong falls, it would easily become the springboard for the totalitarian regime of China to push its rules and priorities overseas, utilizing its economic powers to conform others to their communist values, just as they have done with Hong Kong in the past 22 years. The US and its allies have everything to fear if they wish to maintain a world that is free, open, and civil. I therefore urge the US Congress to stand by Hong Kong, and most of all, to pass the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act. This is not a plea for the so-called foreign interference. This is a plea for democracy. This is a plea for the freedom to choose. And lastly, I would like to quote Eleanor Roosevelt, your most beloved First Lady. "You gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience in which you really stop to look fear in the face. You are able to say to yourself, I lived through this horror. I can take the next thing that comes along." This is a global fight for the universal values that we all cherish, and Hong Kong is in the very front lines of this fight. We are once fearful of what might have come with our silence, and for that, we have now become fearless. Thank you.
Thank you.